for joining us today, Yasasree. It's a pleasure having you on board. And for the attendees, so today's session is by Yasasree. She is the Director of Customer Marketing and Community at Freshworks. And she was among the earliest hires for the Freshworks' customer success team. And she's been instrumental in setting up and scaling the organization from one person to a global powerhouse of 60 plus people spread across multiple locations. And she has over a decade worth of experience in analytics, program management, and customer leadership in companies like eBay, Capillary Technologies, and Cognizant. Welcome, Yasasree, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Gautam. It's a pleasure to be there on this event. So just as an introduction, I think I've been with Freshworks for about over 5 years, and I've had a vast experience on customer success and customer marketing, like you called out. And today I'm super excited to be talking about this topic that's very close to my heart. How do you unlock growth through customer marketing? In other words, how can you make existing customers your biggest source of growth for any SaaS business? And how can customer marketing enable you to do that? So allow me to share my screen. I have a short presentation. So there's oftentimes a lot of talk about customer marketing and customer success, and specifically for, with the established companies, they've already seen success with customer success and customer marketing, and they've seen that how it very heavily impacts their profitability. But I think a lot of early stage and mid stage companies, there's oftentimes a talk about should they invest in customer success, should they invest in customer marketing, does it actually lead to growth, and can they see that revenue growth happening? And oftentimes the whole point about customer marketing is around, we already have marketing for prospects. We are already doing marketing to acquire customers. And should we really go ahead and again spend money on customers who we've already acquired? And how does this benefit our business? And why do we really need another team? So I think I'll go, deep dive into all of those. But before we get started, right, for the audience here who's attending, you could either ping in your answers or just answer it for yourself. But I think one point to sort of consider is what % of your annual revenue comes from your existing customers every year? So is it less than 10%, 10 to 30%, 30 to 50%, or greater than 50%? That's question one, right? How much of your overall revenue comes from your existing customers versus new business? And once you've sort of thought about that, I have another question. Like I was talking about it earlier, how much do you talk about marketing to your existing customers in your post-sale organization? And do you already have some % of overall marketing budget going towards your install base or existing customers? So that's, again, something for you guys to ponder upon. And I'll sort of help you answer these two questions basis, my own experience and the research that I had done, a while ago. So if you look at these two charts, right, to answer our first question, to say, what is this ideal number of, revenue that needs to be coming from your existing customer base? I'm looking at the chart on the left right now, which, again, it's an analysis done by Patrick from Profitwell. And typically what it says is, if you want to have an LTV to CAC ratio of about 2 to 5 or even higher, typically you will need to have 20 to 30% of your overall revenue coming from your existing customer base. And obviously higher this number, higher profitability. And if you look at the chart on the bottom right, again, this chart sort of calls out that in different categories of companies, if you look at, SaaS companies that are growing at the upper 20% or the upper 30%, again, you see that for these businesses that are also growing really well, 20 to 30% of their overall revenue comes from their existing customers. And you have that big bold stat there on the bottom left where, Salesforce has 73% of their revenue coming from their installed base, that is existing customers. So pretty much this is to give an idea of about, how much of your annual revenue should be coming from your existing customers. And moving on, again, this is, I'm sure, one slide that all founders or all of us sort of resonate with. So this is a chart that talks about the correlation between net retention, or in other terms, net expansion rate, that we all call about. How much do you grow net, taking into account your upgrades and downgrades and churn, versus, what is your valuation multiple. That's what you see there on the y-axis. And of course, Zoom is an exception, but if you do look at it, you do see that there is a very, very heavy correlation between your net retention rate and your valuation multiple. So that's sort of, I think, the whole point around why we should be thinking about focusing on growing our existing customer base, and what % should it be forming of our overall annual revenue. And if you remember, we had a question around budgets. Oftentimes we, again, we fail to understand whether we should even, budget for marketing to existing customers. And if we should, what's the directional, percentage we're looking at, and are there any guiding principles that we look at? So I think for that, in my experience, I've really found Jason Lemkin's 10+10 rule very, very simple and sort of easy to understand. Again, what he talks about is that 10% of revenue that's up for renewal and 10% of your expansion target for the year together. I think the 10+10 rule, that's what you have to really look at, your budget when it comes to existing customers. At the side of it, this may look for a very, as a very big number, to all of us. And, that's what I felt earlier as well. But then if you really compare it with your acquisition cost, and then the customer lifetime value that you see by retaining customers more and growing, them further, I think it definitely makes sense. So, you could start off with, let's say, a 5 and a 5, but ideally this is what, Jason Lemkin suggests. So that's around budget allocation. So now that we've established that it is sort of necessary for, very obvious for every business to be thinking about growth from their existing customer base, and about, having some sort of budget allocated to it, let's go to this question, right? How can you, why do we need a dedicated marketing team for customers, or why do we need to look at marketing very, very differently for our existing customers? And oftentimes we see that, there are webinars that are done for prospects, and ultimately, the same things are sort of sent customers' way to attend, or any events that you do for prospects, literally those are the things that are pushed customers' way as well. And here are some points that I've sort of tried to list out to, talk about why the same marketing that you do for your hunting or prospects really does not work for customers. So point number 1, when you look at the target persona, here you're looking at the buyer or the budget owner who's evaluating your software, versus when you look at the persona here on the customer side, these are people who are actually, admins or using your tool, or mid-level managers who are, sort of trying to ensure that they get the results from the software that they've implemented. Second, if you look at, what prospects seek, they want to seek the best solution to the problem that they have at hand, and hence they want to sign up to a software. Versus when it comes to a customer scenario, they've already spent money, they've invested in your software, and they're looking at how you really implement solutions better, and they want to start seeing results. 3, when you look at prospect marketing, prospects are always looking for validation to see other customer names that you have and the kind of results that you've achieved for them. Versus when it comes to customers, they're actually looking at how you have achieved these results for your other customers rather than the results themselves, right? And how can they take that learning and see those results for themselves too. And finally, if you look at, the last point, prospects are figuring out which vendor or which software to trust, versus customers have already made that purchase and they're figuring out how to realize value from this software. So what customers look for and what they look for in different stages of their life cycle is very, very vastly different from really, what prospects look for. So for prospects, it's just about choosing, the right software and going ahead with it, versus for customers, it's a software that sticks on with them and they're really trying to realize that value that you've promised to them at the time of sale. So clearly, prospect marketing does not work for customers. And once we've sort of seen, what customers look for, how do we really now talk about growth, right? How do we use existing customers? How do we leverage existing customers to be a source of growth for us? Here, I'm going to introduce a terminology. I know MQLs is a terminology that we're all sort of very, very familiar with. But we sort of, from a customer standpoint, we call these customer marketing qualified leads. Now, customer marketing qualified leads are, again, an existing customer who has shown explicit interest in, trying to either talk about or be interested in another product of yours, or a higher plan, or an additional module, and so on. So any customer, with an expansion interest with your business, they are called customer marketing qualified leads. And on the left, you can see 3 ways in which, you can unlock growth through your existing customers. One, obviously, very straightforward. If you're a single product company, how do you see if you want to, how do you get more seats from an existing customer and scale your software, maybe across multiple teams? How do you move customers to a higher plan? How do you ensure that they use more advanced features as they scale as a business, and how do you move them to a higher plan? And if you do have a free plan, then how do you constantly ensure that your free customers are, moving to your paid plans? Moving on to cross-sell, obviously, if you have other products, other modules, how do you cross-sell those? In some cases, it can also be apps and integrations. And finally, the third point, which is, again, something that is defined as second order revenue, and something that's extremely beneficial and slightly harder to track, but the sort of impact advocacy can have on your second order revenue is immense. Now, the way to think about it is, one way is referrals. Think about a stakeholder who was in company A and now has moved to company B, and just by the sheer fact that he or she is an advocate, they're sort of taking your software to another company that they go to as well. Similarly, how do you drive referral programs to sort of, get connects of people from their network? And referrals can oftentimes also be internal referrals, referring leaders from other teams where your software might work, or referring other subsidiaries, or maybe taking you to the overall group. So I think building customer champions goes a long way in driving the second order revenue. And finally, references, right? This is, again, a big way in which, creating advocates from your existing customer base goes a long way. Oftentimes, we all do see that in RFPs or any large, typically in any deal that we're trying to close, prospects are always looking for similar customers that you might have, and they want to do a check with them around how they've felt about your software and the overall experience. So that's what I call a second order revenue. I think upsell and cross-sell are more direct, but there is also a second order revenue impact that customer marketing has. So these are the 3 ways in which you can generate growth. And the first step to that is generating customer marketing qualified leads through specific marketing programs that drive either upsell or cross-sell or advocacy. And, just generating leads is not enough. I think, oftentimes a bunch of you who've seen this will resonate it, from marketing teams, wherein if you do not work very closely with sales hand in hand, then there is literally no point, and the leads will remain as leads. And here we're looking at growth, which eventually means revenue. So, which brings me to my next point. How do you, first of all, get started with generating CMQLs? Now, I've listed down, 4 directional ways in which you can do it. First finding being email campaigns work, right? The biggest benefit that you have with your existing customer base is that they have invested, money in you, and they really value communication from you, as long as you send them their way meaningful content that is useful to them. So I think that's a huge benefit that you have when it comes to existing customers versus prospects. And there we need to be extremely conscious of the fact that the minute you start, making it promotional, for instance, hey, you're using product A, why don't you use product B? Doesn't work, right? The minute you say, hey, we're running a special deal, product A plus B off of 50% only for some time, doesn't work, right? You really need to sort of try and hit the nail on the problem that your stakeholder in the customer organization may be facing. Maybe it would be about what is that one problem that your next product can help the customer solve, and how can it help them do it better than a competitor. So asking questions around problems that they're solving versus really selling to them or marketing to them around your other products or higher modules, I think that has always worked. So like I've put down there, I think it's always conversations over promotions, more so with existing customers. So yes, if you do have meaningful content and conversational emails that go out to your existing customers, that can work as a huge lever to generate customer marketing qualified leads. The second point being customer journey mapping, right? And this is again very, very crucial. Unless your existing customer is onboarded happy with your first product, or the lowest plan that he or she is on, and then they successfully ensure that your software is implemented and they start to see results, there is no point talking about any kind of advocacy or growth or expanding seats or higher plan or whatever that is. So I think I would say that onboarding NPS is everything, and that's sort of the basis of ensuring that you drive them through this path of advocacy and growth. So one thing that can be really, really valuable is to ensure that there is a checkpoint where you see, every customer, small or big, you need to ensure that we, get NPS sort of collected from these customers on this milestone of onboarding, just so you understand that the first and most crucial step is taken care of, and then everything else comes in. Third, again, automated growth triggers. Think about this, right? It's always about the timing. It's always about what the customer may be looking for. And again, one of the biggest advantages you have with your existing customers are they're right there in your product, and like we mentioned earlier, on email. So thinking about things like what is that trigger in your product, or what is that activity that the customer does, which will then indicate that they may be having another problem that your next product can solve, or your higher plan feature can solve. I think that's something that, if implemented well, I think companies like Atlassian and HubSpot have seen exponential growth through implementing automated growth triggers. For instance, take a scenario where you see that there is a huge volume of tickets that a customer is getting, and you want to then sort of call out the fact that, hey, you may be getting sales requests that you're missing out on. How about a bot that can help you collect these, so you can respond to your customers back later? So something that's very contextual, and something that actually makes sense in terms of basis the activity that the customer is doing within your product. I think that can exponentially drive growth. And finally, paid channels. I think, again, oftentimes companies do think that you invest in paid channels only for your prospects. But I think paid channels do work well for existing customers as well, especially if you have products where the buyer persona is different for different products in your product suite, or maybe you're connected well with the mid-level management, but if you want to do an org-wide implementation, or if you want to sort of talk strategically about implementing a higher plan and so on, you often will need to be connected to somebody higher up in the ladder. So I think that's where, again, paid channels go a long way for existing customers as well. So I think these are 4 levers, if I may call it that way, to get started with generating customer marketing qualified leads. Not all of this may be applicable to all businesses, and maybe there are things that each of us need to figure out for our own companies, but these are just directional ways in which you can think about generating customer marketing qualified leads consistently from your existing customer base. And going back to my earlier point, right? Customer marketing qualified leads isn't growth. Yes, you're running these amazing campaigns, and your existing customers are responding back to you to say, hey, I want to talk more about this, or I want to learn more about this. And that's not necessarily revenue. It takes an entire sales team to get these conversations going. And then there's think about these scenarios when you run a campaign on your existing customer base. There are always customers who may come back and also talk about the problems that they're facing with your product at this point, and you cannot leave those conversations open. So you will have to have this whole system set up where issues are rightly diverted to your customer success team or your support team. You will have to ensure that positive conversations and leads are then diverted to your account management team or sales team, sort of take them forward, have these discussions with customers, and close the loop, and finally start seeing revenue. So I think point number one, mark ops processes are very, very important. So your ops around this whole customer marketing engine needs to be set up really well to understand where are these, through what channels are these leads generated, how are they assigned ideally in real time to whoever these leads need to be assigned, and also how are you providing your sales teams or account management teams with the right collateral to take the conversation forward. So like I've mentioned there, I think especially with existing customers, response time is everything. You cannot go into a scenario where you finally run a campaign and the customer is interested and not take any action on that. Second, again, leads to pipeline. Again, like I said, this is a behavioral change. You will have to ensure you work closely with your sales teams, involve them in bottoms up planning when it comes to campaigns. You might have account-based marketing strategies where you'll have to closely engage, where the customer marketing team has to closely engage with the account management teams. And eventually, I think account managers are always, more often than not, used to a very outbound approach where they own a book of accounts and they grow them. But these are now leads coming inbound. So I think ensuring that we set the right CRM discipline and ensuring that, we actually see pipeline updated and we have a way to forecast revenue, I think that can make this engine that's, something that's more predictable. And finally, coming to the last point, I think this is what I call the magic tripod for net expansion. One, you cannot have only customer success, because when it comes to a customer success manager, I think the customer thinks that he or she is the trusted advisor from your company, to them. So eventually, if you're thinking that your CSM can drive sale from any account, I'm not sure how it works in the long term, because the minute that customer knows that the CSM has a revenue incentive on him or her, I don't think things will be the same. So customer success managers need to be there to drive that initial onboarding, to drive that ongoing value that customers would want to see, consistently help them out with anything that they may need. And then you need account management who's constantly thinking about putting your growth plan for every account and thinking about how do we get new connects in the organization, how do we sort of expand horizontally, and how do we at the right time talk about growth discussions. And the fuel for both these teams is what I would call the customer marketing team, and the marketing support that's needed for both customer success and account management is something a customer marketing team provides. And all these three teams really need to work hand in hand in symphony to ensure that you see the exponential expansion that you're seeking to achieve. So which is why I call this the magical tripod. And I think that sort of brings me to the end of what I wanted to cover. Ultimately, I would say, new revenue is king, expansion is empire building. So, and I would think that customer marketing is the most powerful ammunition. So that's sort of my closing thoughts here. And thanks for listening in patiently. Would love to take some questions.
All right, so we have one question. We'll wind up the session after that. So the question is, what is the best way to generate for SMB customers who fall in the smaller bucket of MRR or ARR?
I think for SMB customers, pretty much, there are two scenarios. One, you may be a single product company. Two, you may be a multi-product company. So let me talk about the single product company approach first. When it comes to SMB customers, we do need to understand that for them, they're busy building their own business, and you will need to be extremely focused around how you can help them. And oftentimes, they are sort of price sensitive, and that ROI that they get from the product that you implement is something that they're really interested to see. And for SMB customers, I think on the single product side, you could drive referral programs at scale. And if you have a scale of SMB customers, you can start building communities around the customers that you have, and start driving growth-based conversations basis the growth path that you want them to be in. And you can definitely look at converting them into advocates, looking at getting more more leads from them, as like I was talking about in a referral program. And like I said, I think in-app is everything for SMB. Specifically, right? You have these people using your product day in, day out. So basis product usage and certain triggers, I think you can always ensure that you have these small nudges set up in the product, which can lead to quick growth.
All right.
Multi-product side, obviously, like I said, the channels remain the same, but how do you talk about other products that you have?
Great. All right. Thank you so much, Yasasree. So, for the other questions, we'll have them answered and we'll put them up on our blog. And thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure hosting you. And